Okay, well, welcome. Now I'm going to get real official. Thanks to Lizzie and Meredith for joining. I've just so you guys know, I've told them and so many of my colleagues about how amazing you all are and how, I just enjoy so much our work together, and it makes me feel really good to be able to work with you on individual fundraising, but I am someone who very much knows my limitations, and that's why it's so cool that I have such great colleagues who have expertise all over the place. And so this is the first time we're doing this, where I'm bringing in folks to do a 1 hour sharing of info, and hopefully I'll be pulling together a whole series of these, but I'm always going to record them. And so I'll share it out to everybody, and you can share it with anybody that you'd like. But again, thank you so much, Lizzie and Meredith. And I want to start by having them introduce themselves. So L comes first in the alphabet. So Lizzie.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Lizzie Failing. I'm the Senior Manager of CRM Systems here at Best Friends, and I've been here for about actually today is my anniversary, so 6 years. And before that, I was at Pause Chicago, and I've spent pretty much my entire nonprofit career working with databases. And I live in Michigan right now with my 3 dogs and my husband.
Thanks. Meredith.
And I'm Meredith Watson. I'm the Senior Manager of Prospect Development. And I live in Portland, Maine. And I have been at Best Friends for about 4 years. And my team does a lot of the work. Once the data is in the system, we pull it out and figure out what to do with it, try to find the best people to donate, work with the fundraisers to help them come up with strategy and better understand their donors, and looking at trends and analysis and all of that good stuff.
Nice. And so we'll start the presentation, which I had nothing to do with creating. You guys are lucky. But if you have questions, ask at any time. And at the end, assuming we have some time, I'd love for you guys to share with, Lizzie and Meredith, sort of things that databases that you work with. And if there's some questions that we can answer now, otherwise, I can connect you guys with Lizzie or Meredith after for other questions. So we will get started. Let's see if I can do this. All right.
Cool. So in my career, I have found that you can really make data management as simple or as complicated as you want it to be. So the first things that you're going to want to do when you're thinking about this is ask yourself some questions about how you want to use it. What do you have? What are your resources? That kind of stuff. But then my 3 big points that I make to people is what you need to do is collect it. So actually collecting the data, maintaining it, and then using it. And so for collecting it, thinking about what's relevant for your organization. If you just want to keep it really simple and understand who your donors are. So collecting the really basic stuff of their contact information, their title, gender, that kind of thing. And then how they're donating to you. And then my next biggest point is establishing standard operating procedures. So like I said, you can make this really complicated or you can make it really simple, but establishing those guidelines for yourself is going to make a huge difference. Really having a set parameter for people on how they're entering the data so that you can do reporting on it. Of course, you also want to make sure that you're keeping your data secure and you're keeping it up to date. So implementing some data quality initiatives, which again can be really simple. And then having a good understanding of how you want to use it. So if you have good data, that means that you can improve your communication with your donors or your constituents. And that's been proven time and time again to increase how engaged constituents are with you if you're able to do that personalization, have accurate ways to communicate with them. And then also you can use that information to make strategic decisions. So next slide is just some questions to help you think about when you're setting up your database or if you're cleaning up your database. So asking yourself, are you gathering relevant information for your organization? This can go beyond just donors. So when I worked at Pause Chicago, we made sure that we collected information about our community caretakers, and we kept that in our database. Gathering information about your volunteers or other ways that people are engaging with you. Asking yourself what you're missing. So if you do a query of your database and you notice that you're missing emails for a lot of people, figuring out ways that you can fill those gaps. And then also asking yourself, are you actually using the data to make decisions? And if not, why? So that kind of leads me to my next question is this, can you use it to report? So having data in your database and no ways to use it makes it kind of pointless. So making sure that you can actually report on it. And then this is more around security and like data maintenance, but thinking about who has access to the data. You definitely don't want to have your database open to everybody in the organization, both from a security standpoint, but then also more hands that touch it, the messier it can get. So having those standard operating procedures. And then identifying roles and responsibilities. So again, if you can set just view access for people, if you wanted to keep that open, if you have somebody that's like primarily responsible for data entry, having those roles identified and documented is helpful. And then asking yourself if data helps inform your decision making. This is a very popular phrase in today's world, but making data informed decisions and having your data leveraged to help you do that. And next slide. So just some things that I found in my career from various size organizations of collecting data that matters. So demographics is very helpful to collect, and this can mean age, gender, marital status, occupation, but it also can be around their interests in your organization. Like if you know that somebody's really interested in pit bull initiatives versus somebody that's only interested in community cats. Contact information is obviously very important because if you can't contact your people, then they don't know that you need help. So making sure that you've got addresses, phone numbers, emails, and then having an understanding of how you communicate with people. So if your primary way of communicating with people is, sending them snail mail, making sure that you have addresses versus if you never call people, the phone number is going to be less important.
Okay, don't say that. I need to be calling people.
Yes, do call people, but
we talk about that a lot here.
yeah, asking people questions always makes a difference than just assuming they know. And then collecting information about your actual donation. So Meredith will go into this a little bit more, but collecting and recording the donations. So making sure that that's not just in a financial system, but that you understand when someone gave to what campaign, if that's relevant, what amount do they give? And then there's a couple of different like standard data points around that. So like their LTV is their lifetime value, understanding the frequency that they're giving, the first time they gave versus the last time they gave. And then what I think is very helpful to know is around interactions. So tracking if somebody is a volunteer, if they attended one of your events, if they're willing to foster, if possible, looking at if they're engaging with the emails that you send, if they're looking at your website. Because if you're able to personalize your engagement with them, it makes a huge difference in how willing they are to work with you next time. So if you can send someone a thank you letter that also includes, you gave $50 last month, but you've also volunteered with us every week for the last year, like that makes a difference to people. It makes them feel more connected. Next slide. And then just a quick data entry checklist. So this is how we've tried to set up our databases to make sure that we can pull information in the best way. So storing your data in as few systems as possible. So having many different databases or your constituent information stored in a spreadsheet and a volunteer system and a database could be problematic. So trying to have like one primary system of record is best. And then developing standard for how you do data entry. And this can be whatever makes sense to you as an organization. But my like number one piece of advice would be to document it so that, you know, in 5 years, you know that you store phone numbers with dashes versus parentheses or whatever it might be. But part of the reason why I highly recommend that is because entering data in a standard way will reduce duplicates and data entry issues so that you know that this person is maybe already in your database and you know that because everything matched up nicely. Also documenting how you want constituents to be addressed. So making sure that you've got salutations and you know that if they're in a household together, you're going to address them alphabetically, not just by the husband or the wife or something like that. And again, documentation key. And then creating business rules too for how you're going to do data cleanup. Are you going to run like duplicate merges every week or every month? And then sticking to it. And then also, I think Meredith might go into this a little bit too, but having a definition around your donor segments. So kind of categorizing them of like frequency of giving, campaign by giving, or if they're involved in other activities within your organization. Any questions about any of that?
I'm sure, you know, if you guys are thinking like, oh my God, we haven't even thought of this and like putting together guidelines, if that's going through your head right now, you know, that's something that I can try to get from Lizzie with some, you know, suggested general guidelines and share that with you as a sort of draft to get going on that. Because it probably does seem a little overwhelming that you don't even understand what data points and what guidelines to consider.
Yeah, and I definitely can share some of our like standard operating procedures to help give you an idea of like how you could do it. So you're not having to like draft something from scratch too.
All right. Next slide, I take it.
Okay, and so this is where I get into what I think is the fun part, but around making sure that you've got some standardization around your data cleanup. So I'd recommend that every week, if possible, that you are backing up your data. So that this helps if you ever lost your data, that you could go back to the most recent one. So at Best Friends, we do that daily, but that's probably not feasible for everyone. So at least having a backup of your database. Monthly, I'd recommend doing a merge process. So making sure that you don't have duplicate records in your system. And then running, like if you have data quality checkups. So for example, we have a data quality process that runs that looks for any email address that doesn't have like the at the end of it, or phone numbers that aren't formatted correctly. And then we also have some people on my team that will review reports and send reports to people. So we'll run a report on like overdue pledges or campaign fund activities so that people can see what how they're doing against the goal. And then either quarterly or yearly, I'd recommend running append services if you can. So you can run a service through the US Post Office called NCOA, which is going to give you change of addresses. If you can, also running services to get phone address emails. So this is going to just help bolster your data if you don't have that information already. And then also a deceased record finder, just so that you can make sure that your data is up to date. And then I also recommend just periodically reviewing your business rules and processes to make sure that they're still meeting your organization's need. And then doing training refreshers with your team to make sure everyone knows what the rules are. And I think that's it for my slides.
Meredith, you ready?
Yeah, sure. And I've never seen Lizzie do that presentation, but listening to her, it makes me, it's overwhelming for me just because databases are overwhelming. And as somebody who uses the data that goes into it, all of what Lizzie says is really important, but I think it's also important to stress that we have a lot of human power going into our work with data, and we're still not immune from making mistakes. And we've done things that 2 years down the road, we're like, why did we do that? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So we'll spend a lot of time cleaning up things we've done in the past. And we're an organization that's grown fairly quickly over the years. And I think as we've grown, we've made quick decisions sometimes that later we rethink and strategize and determine that we could have done a different way. So I think my biggest piece of advice is to take your time when you're thinking about all of this stuff, because you really do want to, it can be really complicated, but you do want to think about how someone 5 years down the road might be looking at and using this information. And, you know, when Lizzie was talking about collecting, maintaining, and using data, maintaining is so important, and really thinking about how you're going to use it. And I do think it's really, we have a saying here among our fundraisers, and Sarah, Hero, we use a system called Blackbaud CRM, and we refer to it as Hero. And some of the fundraisers will swear under their breath about Hero and all the work they have to do in it, because it can be a lot. But we often say, like, if it's not in Hero, it didn't happen. And I think that for somebody 5 years from now, trying to understand what happened with a gift or with a donor or prospect, it's really important for that them to be able to open the record and understand, because you may not be here in 5 years, or the person who is working with that person might not be here. I say that with the caveat of, as you're entering all of this great information about people, be careful how you enter it, because you can create mountains of data that is really difficult to sift through and find the information you want. So all of that going back to just take your time, really think about how you want to use your database or however you're collecting data, and make it useful for you so it's not so overwhelming, because most people don't love living in databases and Excel spreadsheets. Like, Lizzie and I are different. So we do, but most people don't. So think about the people who like this kind of stuff the least, and figure out how to make it work for them.
Yeah, and that's where I definitely recommend like asking yourself some of those questions that we talked about at the beginning of like setting yourself up for success. Yeah.
So this is just an example of a donor record. And this is just to show you the type of information that you can store. And each one of these little tabs, and I'm using my mouse, not realizing that I'm not sharing my screen. Each one of these little tabs stores different bits of information. And you can get as specific and as detailed as you want, or you can leave things blank. But here we want to make sure, you know, we have the basic information about people. Like Lizzie said, if we have contact information, make sure that's included. How do they like to be addressed? Think about salutations and how you want to address people. If they have nicknames, because you do want to know the people who are donating to your cause. We can see at the bottom of the screen, there's a history of donations from this donor. They give $25 every month through workplace giving. You know, all of the information in our database can be extracted. So, you know, here we're looking at this one screen, and it's helpful to just sort of get an idea, but we want to be able to get the information out too and work with it. But you know, this is a donor's biography with the organization. So you really, as much information as you are able to use and maintain, you want to include. This tab here where it says documentation and interactions right next to the highlighted revenue tab, we track almost every interaction with the donor, whether Sarah reached out and talked to the donor, or whether somebody called to thank them for something, or if they called to ask about a cat in a tree, you know. So we really want to be able to tell the story of the donor. Sarah, if you move to the next slide.
Yep. Why is it not moving to the next slide? There we go.
Oh, no, one back.
Ah, there we go.
So for each of those donations you saw in the last slide, each donation has its own record. And I think pretty much any database that you would sign on with, what you want to make sure that each donor has a unique identifier. So each of our donors has a donor ID, and each donation has a unique identifier. So each of our donations have something called a revenue ID. So you're easily able to pull these things up. We collect a whole lot of information that goes with our donations. You know, we have batch numbers. How are they entered? The revenue ID. When was the donation given? What's the designation? At Best Friends, we have a whole lot of designations, but you may just have, you know, unrestricted, or, you know, a couple of restricted projects. We collect information about the appeal that they're responded to. So again, like, this is something you really want to think about. How much information are you able to collect? How much can you maintain? And what would be useful for you to collect? Some things are impossible to tie back to. So you may not necessarily know what a donor is responding to, you know, so you want to think, can I link this gift back to a specific appeal that went out? If I can't, what's the alternative? Do we have a placeholder type of appeal? So you just want to sort of think about those things, because when you get down the road and maybe want to start analyzing some of this, your analysis is only as good as the data that's in the system. So like, we see a lot of, I won't say this here, but places that I used to work, there was like the garbage in, garbage out philosophy. Like, if you put a lot of junk in the system, when you go to pull it out and analyze it, it's not going to be very useful. So you want to think about that when you're trying to link, you know, cause and effect within a database. Trying to see if there's anything else on this slide that's worth talking about. Sarah, you can go to the next slide, actually. Yep. So this is an example of how we extract the data. So all of the stuff that we're putting in the system, we can get all of it out, because if you can't get it out, it's not that useful. So we have something called Query Builder, and this is a really robust tool for us. Every database has a different one. But if you have a question about your data, I'd say, like, I want to see every gift that was $100 or more from the last week. You can use all of those little nodes on the left-hand side to, you know, select, you know, help you form the question you want to ask. And then in that bottom section, we call that the output section, that bottom right-hand section. That's like, what do you want to see when you get, when you're asking that question? Like, I want to see all of these gifts. I want to see who gave them. I want to see where they live. I want to see how they paid and what the money was designated for. So you can, we're really lucky here that we can pretty much try to answer any question that we think of when it comes to our data. And this is, if you have people on your team who like databases and are a little nerdy, like, put them here. This is a lot of fun for folks who are inclined to think that way. Sarah is probably looking at this like, get me out of here.
No, literally, when this screen first popped up, I was like, I think I'm getting a migraine.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there are, I've worked with a lot of, you know, fundraisers and directors in the past, and they say to me, like, I would rather go ask someone for $1 billion than look at a spreadsheet. And I will respond by saying like, I would rather look at a spreadsheet with 1 billion lines than go ask someone for $100. So we all have our roles, right? Yeah, okay, good. I'm glad that somebody's geeking out over this. Yeah, I mean, this is a really, really useful tool. And again, it's something you want to be thoughtful about. Like, what am I trying to answer? Like, what's my question? What am I trying to answer? Then what am I going to do with that information? Like, how am I going to use it? So I live in this space. And because I work with the fundraisers, like I'll often ask things like, I want to see everybody who lives in New York City, who gives, 3 or more gifts a year, and who is within this certain zip code. And you can do all of this in here. And Sarah, if you go to the next slide.
Wait, hold on. Is that it?
So this is what comes out of that. So like when you export the data from what we call our query builder, it pops into this Excel spreadsheet. And then this is where I think the real fun starts, is where you can start to like manipulate the data and really start to answer the questions that you're asking. And again, you can make them as simple or as complex as you have the capacity to deal with at any given time. Whether that's, people that are able to help you with this, or, brain space at the end of a really long day. There's so much you can do with this information. So, collecting and maintaining the data is the foundation for being able to use it and then make actionable decisions that will hopefully, increase in more donors, more gifts, a better understanding of the people that contribute to you. And, that's what it's all about. Putting all of this in a database is so important, as long as you really think about how you're going to use it. So, and if you don't know if you don't love Excel, you're not an expert in Excel, there's probably an intern or a volunteer around that likes doing this stuff. And I love doing this stuff, so I'm happy to answer any questions ever if they come up from your end, if you just sort of need help with it, because I'd be happy living in spreadsheets 24 hours a day. So I think that's sort of where I wanted to go with this.
Right.
Yes, you can do all of this and more in Excel.
Yeah, so folks, ask questions. I'm going to stop sharing so we can see more squares. Ask questions, because I have questions, but I'm going to wait for you guys to ask them, because I'll ask a lot of things.
I have a question. I got a question. This is awesome. So this is Invest Friends. Obviously, you've built your own platform. Is that right? Is it based on Excel, or how does that work?
No, well, we've purchased. So with a database we use is a product that's been purchased. So we have not. It's actually, Lizzie could probably speak more to this. Like, we've customized it a lot, but it's from a company called Blackbaud.
Yeah, Blackbaud. So
Black
does
what?
anyone here use like Razor's Edge or eTapestry or anything? So Blackbaud is like one of the #1 vendors for nonprofit CRM systems, constituent relationship management. So our system is their largest enterprise system.
Okay. So that's like an alternative to Salesforce in the.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
What would you all say are some of the more common ways that you use the data? I think for me, there's it's hard to imagine all the ways we could be using it, and I'm sure that we're not using it nearly as much as we could. So after the collecting and maintaining, how do you all find that you use it?
So in my previous roles at smaller organizations, I'd say like we didn't have a robust analytics team like we do at Best Friends. We didn't have like individual like fundraisers. It was a really small team. So like the number one way we used our database was to pull lists to send mailings to people. And so being able to like really like be able to segment based off of if they live in the city that you want to target, or they are recent donors versus a volunteer, like that kind of keeping it that simple just so that you can do mailing lists is how we've used it at smaller places. And then also to do like year-end reporting, like we raised X number of dollars. We had X number of volunteers.
I think that's a big thing for a lot of the folks that I meet with, that you all have to present to board of directors. You have to, you know, Gabe, you had to pitch for, you know, a new position. So having the data to be able to present to your board, you know, Kayla, you want, you know, you're looking into a capital campaign, like having this really strong data will help you create reports that I have absolutely no idea how to do. But you know, that's essential. And so I'm going to ask this question to Lizzie and Meredith, because, you know, a lot of you guys, you know, this might seem like another planet, another universe. And so you want to know, you know, this might not be in your plans for 2024, but if you're using Excel now, what can you do with not what can you do, but how should you start preparing your data in Excel that will lead you into when you're ready to get a database, you know, how to maximize and make sure you're doing things correctly in Excel.
So I think from when I've transitioned databases, the most important thing is something called a data map. So making sure that you have your fields identified so that you've got like one column is always going to be a name. One column is always going to be an address. One column is always going to be your donation amount field. So like having that consistency around something that sounds relatively simple, but can very quickly become unwieldy in Excel is not only the same and standardized, but that you have it documented. And that's something I can share out too, is like an example of what a data map is.
That would be great, because that's something when I first started, you know, there's a lot of folks who weren't using Excel, sort of, you know, they would get a PayPal report and, you know, have a volunteer board member who would deposit the checks but never make copies or log that information anywhere. So we're, you know, this is a uphill battle to get to Excel for a lot of folks. And so I created just like a simple template that's just what I know for data points, which, as you two know, is not that much. So I would really appreciate any guidance on other data points. But I also want to say, folks, if you're overwhelmed by what you're seeing, please don't be. And I'd love to hear from folks who are using databases, what you're using, how it's going. And I asked Lizzie when I first said, would you guys do something and present some info with me? Hey, Lizzie, how many or when should you consider getting a database? And her answer was basically like, if you have a donor, you should get a database. You know, now is the time to do it before you get out of control with too much data. So
yeah, this is why like having a system, like one primary system that's your system of truth, whether that's Excel, whether it's PayPal, like whatever it is, but having that one location that you know is your standard makes like such a world of difference.
I can talk on our end, Sarah.
yeah, I'd love to have you share.
We're a very small organization. I only have 2 employees, and I'm the president and shelter director of the board, so I'm a volunteer. So what we did is we used Excel for many years, and it was very basic. We would send letters out and nobody ever figured out how much was coming back. So our biggest issue was when it came back, was it going in the right line? And what we did is, and we were just using PayPal and a lot of checks. Everybody gave checks. So what I did is I switched over to one system, loaded everything up. I found we only had 800 contacts and only 120 were sending money in. So it was devastating. So nobody answered our letter because the letter was horrible, but that was another thing. So what I did is I moved over to Give Butter because there is no charge. It has a function that's real easy to use. Nobody cares. The customers will do a tip. If they don't want to, they don't have to. And that changed everything because it has segmenting, it has, and I'm very used to working with Excel, actually doing everything with it. And I found that that was our biggest piece that really built the database. So now we're up to almost 3,500, which for my organization it's unbelievable, but it's easy, you know.
Mhm.
So the last appeal, we were able to get almost 400 donors in 1 year. So because of the change in the letter and also the emails going out. I have one person that's on staff that, remember, they do everything because there's only two, which Sarah knows. She's very technical. She loves the system. So I was able to turn over the website to her. And what she does is everything goes onto the website. It's all linked. It's all mapped. And the only thing I have trouble with, which hopefully you can help me with, is we use Shelter Love for our internal system for adopting, which is a wonderful system, but I still have to download into, I still have the data mapping to do, which for me, it's a lot because I'm also doing everything else, you know, with the teams. And again, as Sarah knows, my board is not active. They are very introverted and they're afraid to talk to people. So I am trying to get people on that'll help with this. So they don't, they're just getting sick of looking at me. All these the same people, the same ones. So that's tough, you know, but
Yeah.
building it was easy. It was harder when I used Bloomerang. I had less help, but I do have a dedicated person on Give Butter that just works with me and answers immediately. So I found that was the best thing we did because we really couldn't afford any kind of a system to do this. So because you know, 'cause you can see we're so small.
And
But
it's completely
mhm.
free.
It's completely free. You have the option to pay 1%, and they
Mhm.
take it right from the sales. Like they'll charge it kind of like Shelter Love does. They charge a fee on top of the
Mhm.
processing fee, or you can have customers donate and have a nice little saying on there saying, help us pay for, and you know, it's like anything, but they're getting funding. I said, this is great, but they
Yeah.
have everything. Giving Tuesday, it's a full built system. I was amazed. And just that we were able to raise $22,000. We only raised 1,500 last time. So
Wow.
all by
That's
changing the
great.
platform, you
Yeah.
know, and more online. They have online auctioning, which I'm so excited about. So
Have
the
you,
stuff that
we use,
gets me
we
excited.
use Give
Yep.
Butter as well. Have you used their online auction before? Because I'm getting ready to use it for the first time.
Yes.
I'm just curious if you've used it.
Yes, we used it at Christmas. We have a holiday boutique that's a very big, it's our biggest event, but I wanted to raise more money. So we did the auction of the items that didn't sell. It took a lot of work taking pictures real fast, but we did it. And we still made money on it. We made like $1,000 just on that. I didn't think we'd make anything. And our auction is going to be Christmas in July. So, but I loved it. It was so simple and very easy to use. Do you have a person you work with Give Butter?
We don't have a specific person. We were the same. We had no kind of system at all for donor management when I started. We're a nonprofit foster-based dog rescue. And we were just using PayPal. And so I found Give Butter and started using it. And then I got in some fundraising groups and I got convinced to go to Network for Good.
Okay.
And we switched to them for a database and just honestly had a pretty bad experience. The customer service wasn't great.
That's what happened with Bloomerang. Yeah.
I didn't get
Yeah.
the support that I was looking for. And honestly, for what we were paying for it, the functionality wasn't there for me. And so we just migrated back to Give Butter. I just like their customer
Yeah, it's
service
easy.
can't be beat too. I mean, you
Yeah.
can get on a chat, you get a person within 15 minutes and they can help
Yep.
you sort out
Mhm.
whatever you need. It's easy to
Yeah.
build pages. And I was looking at y'all's demo of your, more sophisticated like donor management software. And I appreciated Gabe's question about like, what are we really using this for? Because that's where I kind of got a Network for Good is it's like, I'm not using the sophisticated,
Right.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
that are here. We just don't have a need for that quite yet. And so I've been happy with the switch back, but we haven't used them for silent auction yet. So we'll be testing that out with our big event in May. And I did have a question. This might not be as relevant for, sorry, I'm working in my communal office today, so it's noisy around me. This might not be as relevant for a database question, but do you guys track donor cultivation? Or like I've seen a lot of people that have donor cultivation plans where like, you know, the first time someone donates, I send them a welcome kit that has a little PDF in it on who we are, what we do, our impact, that kind of thing. And then like a week after that, you know, and kind of having this cultivation plan. My question is there a system or a database or a tracking mechanism that helps people stay on track with that? Because it's something that I struggle with new donors right now. We've kind of created like a little workaround. We do the same thing with like our adopters. When they adopt, we have different touch points that we touch base with them. And I created this kind of automation map within Trello, and it's conjoined with our Slack. So we get like a reminder, hey, this dog was adopted 30 days ago, check in. And I've been debating doing something like that with our donors, of just being able to put a donor on a little bit of like a journey almost. But I'm curious if you guys have any kind of recommendations or how you guys keep up with that kind of thing, if there's a service for that, or if I should rig up something. I'm not very technology savvy. I mean, what I've rigged up has worked, but like if there's something easier, it would be great to know about it.
Yeah, this is where like you can make it as simple as or as complicated as you want. So Blackbaud CRM is our constituent database, but then we use this tool called Luminate Online, which is also a Blackbaud product, for our email marketing. So anybody who makes a donation, whether it's $5 or $200, like they're gonna, and it's their first donations, they get entered into an automatic welcome series, and that trigger being their start date, like the date that they were added to the database, and then their donation date. And so that is automated, but then we also have like more manual, like automated welcome series. So if somebody fills out a form saying they're interested in fostering kittens, we capture the date that they filled it out, and then we have like a manual trigger to send them a series. And that's where that's built out in like you could do it in Trello. We use a tool called Visio to kind of map out our workflows for that kind of thing. But there are tools out there that do like automated marketing.
Okay, and that's what we have, constant contact, and I've been looking at potentially just like sticking a new donor in there and then doing a welcome series for them. I think I just get in my head about that because I don't want to come off too spammy either, and I don't want like new donors to get annoyed by too much contact.
Yeah, it's helpful to like kind of map out your total, like the constituent journey, like making sure that you've documented all the different like paths that you want to contact someone in, so that you're not sending a new donor who also is maybe a volunteer and attended an event. Like you're not sending them like 5 different emails that all say the same thing. So having like a hierarchy of what is the most important thing that they get.
That was helpful. Thank you guys.
And I should say, you know, once I start, I'll get, you know, I have my portfolio of donors and I have a prospect list. So like tomorrow I'm going to Southern Virginia. I have a couple donors in my portfolio that I'm meeting with, but then I look in the prospect list to try to get more meetings. But every single donor that I'm assigned to, I create with Meredith's help and her team, the same sort of journey. So I know what information they're getting from best friends outside of my contact, but I'm somebody who personally, I don't like to overstock people. So I have colleagues who send things once a month. To me, that's too much. I'm a big fan of once a quarter, and then if something relevant comes up for their location, I'll send an additional touch point or give a call. But I'll never remember to do this. And so it's already preloaded with pending and planned steps. So if a new donor gets put into my portfolio, I'll create like an 18-month planned step, and I get reminded on those. Like I can pull a report at any time of my pending and planned steps. So so that's all doable. And so does GiveButter not have that option to create that sort of detail? It might be something worth asking.
Yeah, they don't from at least my like messing around with the platform. They are really responsive to like requests and additions, and like the auction wasn't an option 2 years ago when we were using it. Now it is, so they're constantly adding and building. I think for a free tool, I mean, it's the best like that I've had experience with. But no, I mean, I can add tags, I can add notes, I can customize, I can create households, like all of those types of things within the contact. But being able to trigger, and it doesn't really have a task feature at either. Network for Good had task features where you could, assign tasks to different teammates. And I haven't found that to be a functionality in Give Better. But granted, I haven't gone digging recently.
Yeah, I
for
would push
that,
them for
so.
that because it sounds
Mhm.
like they're trying to develop. I know there's another group that I'm working with who's been using Give Butter, and they asked about wealth screenings and things like that. So there are lots of add-ons that it sounds like Give Butter has potential. So I'd push them.
Yeah,
'Cause
I was
all of
looking
you-
at
Yeah.
I was looking at wealth screenings too, because that's just something we're discussing with our upcoming capital campaign.
Yep.
And they had some add-ons for that within Give Butter. And like email integrations and things like that. I don't use the email integrations. We just keep everything in constant contact. But usually, honestly, if I'm emailing donors, I just have templates in my Google and my Gmail, and I send out my thank you templates that way. And since we're so small, I mean, I'm getting a handful of donations a day. That's pretty manageable for me to manage. But so all of my thank yous to my donors come straight from my personal email and not through. I just feel like we're getting weird spammy kickbacks, especially with these third-party things. And now that everyone's changing their CNLs and like all the stuff on the websites with spam, I just feel more comfortable knowing that my donors are getting communication that's just coming straight from me into their inboxes. I feel more confident that they're opening it. But all of our donors that donate in Give Butter, I use Zapier, and so they get automatically updated into our constant contact and put on our mailing list. So they're still getting our newsletters and our blasts and all of that. But the thank yous, sorry, I have a very needy goal. If you see my arm like jumping like that. But so all of our donor recognition and thank yous and that kind of cultivation are coming specifically just from my email, but they are getting added to our general like communications as well.
I
Is
can
that
tell you,
standard
Kayla,
practice?
well, Kayla,
Yeah.
what I do, I was using 3 different systems and it was getting ridiculous. What I did, Bloomerang was, again, a system that could handle a lot of that, tasks and everything, but it was very cumbersome and it didn't have help. And that was my biggest issue. With Give Butter, I use all functions. I just loaded everything up. I have templates. I have everything in email. I can just hit a button and it goes. The thank yous, it sends a beautiful thank you that we developed, and it sends it to our info@nfsaw.org. Comes from there. It has no trailing piece. Bloomerang had Bloomerang on the end. So people were rejecting it. They don't reject it. And the answers saying, thank you for sending me an email. Here, I have questions. So one thing that we did is we converted everything, and I use every feature, and that helped us. And again, I don't think I could do it with all the different ones because my job is so, I'm I'm already doing 60 hours a week writing policies, right? Sarah, it's ridiculous what we have to get done. So I found that was really easy, but they did give us a dedicated person, and I meet with her weekly. So, and she gave us a goal of raising 150,000 this year, and we're on our way. I mean, it really helped me because it drove us, but I said I'd use everything, and we did, because I was using Constant Contact, but I didn't like the way it came out to the donor. So I was like working with different things. And we do use Maddie's Fund for a lot too. They have a Maddie's Foundation program that we use for our adopters, and we're just looking into doing it for our customers so we can send customized things. We use Canva a lot also in Give Butter because it downloads automatically, so it's really easy. So that was one thing we did. But I found once we switched, it was easier for me, and growing it is even easier. So I feel like I can grow bigger with it rather than using the other systems. I don't want to think about it. I want it just to run.
So we have about 4 minutes, probably 3.5 left. What, Gabe, Misty, Leanne, any questions? Or because I can also connect you. I've never connected all of you that I work with. So if anybody's like, I need to talk to Aggie, because she's like the Give Butter, guru, just let me know and I'll make introductions to.
Well, with us being a small rural shelter, I only have 2 full-time employees as well. You know, we are overwhelmed with trying to get things done. And I didn't really have a database collection system in place until Leanne, one of our new board members, came on. And I also didn't have active board members, and that is very tough. Leanne has started something with Excel, and then I know we've been working with you on getting some new programs in place. Leanne, and I know we talked about Give Butter. That's what I had a few questions about. Did you say it was free to nonprofits?
Yeah, it is a nonprofit program. It's run for nonprofits. Yes, it's free.
Okay.
If you don't want to charge your customer, that one, it's like they have a little button on there, and they even show
Yeah.
you what it looks like. Because at first I thought, should we do it? And they said you don't have to. You just pay 1%. If you
Wow.
have an online system for adoptions, Shelter Love does the same thing. They charge a fee on top of the fee, and it's
Yeah.
a small
Yeah.
fee, might be
Sure.
1%. You can do that, and it doesn't affect, you don't pay it, the customer does pay it. So it's part of that program. If they don't pay it, then of course it comes off your donation, kind of like PayPal does. They have the fee. So what they
Yeah.
do is they have that
Yeah,
little
we have
button, but
PayPal.
it says on it, help us pay for our system. So that they think they're donating to help us pay, and they all love it. I even asked them, I said, does it bother you? You know, because I'm very open with our donors. And they said, oh no, I didn't even
Yes,
notice it. That's great.
transparency.
I want to help you pay for the system. So, but they have things like office hours. I don't know, Kayla, if you've used that. I do that a
Wow.
lot with my staff. So, but I try everything they put out because it's easy for us, and they help us build it. So, they have campaigns, they call it. Everything has a campaign for us, and we use it. Like we have a shred event coming up, it's a campaign. Our
Gotcha.
sponsor form is on it. They just click on that link, it goes. So we do a lot of that stuff from the website. But Misty, if you have questions, I can answer them. Okay, so can help you.
Yeah, I can
Because
connect
we're
you.
small. We're really small.
Misty is still working. They had a tornado a year ago, and
Oh.
they still are not. They're still in a temporary shelter. They got a great amount of support that came out after the
Wow.
tornado, and
Yeah.
and so now we're trying to, keep that energy for the animals and her team alive,
Yeah.
and hopefully raise a lot more money.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this is a good time for you guys to get a database. And Leanne, I love that you're just like, yes, I love it.
I'm so excited. Y'all don't know, we have a board meeting tonight and it's going to be rough. And this is going to be amazing to talk to them about. So thank you.
That's awesome. Well, Lizzie and Meredith, I can't thank you enough for this. It's, so much more than I'll ever know, and you're so good at presenting it. So, thank you so, so much. And guys, I'm here if you have any questions, if you want to, get connected with Lizzie and Meredith, because we're just so thrilled that, all the life saving you're doing, and that you'll partner with best friends, and, that we get to work together to, save more amazing pets. So anything we can do to help, just let us know. Cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
talking about segmenting. I haven't used it.
Thank you guys.
Awesome.
You.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank
Have
you.
a good rest of your day.
Okay, bye.
Bye.